Hello, welcome back to another episode of From Prison to the Streets. I'm Erik. I did 11 years in prison and I talk about prison stuff. Today we are talking about having a meaningful life in prison. And this is in response to a comment left by Robert H. He wanted to know if one could have a meaningful life in prison. The answer in short is absolutely, without a doubt. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. But before I do that, I want to thank a few people. Lindsey sent me another piece of fan mail. It says, wishing you well. And he sent me $100. I really appreciate that, Lewis. Helps out a lot with the channel, and it helps out with the repairs around here that I have to do after that big storm that we had. Thank you very much for that. And thank you for always being down in the comments. I love interacting with you guys down in the comments. So, Lewis, thank you very much for being a part of the channel. I also want to thank Erik Ginter and Erik Thornton for your PayPal donations. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And thank you to everybody who watches my channel. I really appreciate you giving me your time and paying attention to my videos and stuff. It means a lot to me. Your support means the world to me. I really enjoy interacting with you guys on the channel. So thank you very, very much. With that, be sure to like and subscribe, and we're going to talk about meaning in prison. So when you talk about having a meaningful life in prison, the first thing that comes to my mind are lifers. And I hung out with a lot of guys who are doing life, guys who are in for murder. And, you know, it's funny because you would think that those would be some of the roughest guys in prison, but honestly, they're some of the most laid back until you cross them. But they are usually off doing their own thing. They're usually involved with really positive stuff. And they do their time very, very well without bothering anybody else. When I started hanging around those guys, I kind of wondered, what they had going for them that allowed them to be upbeat and involved with positive stuff, knowing they weren't going to get out of prison. Well, now we have to talk about something that I found, and that's principles. And I don't mean, I'm not talking about principles that are based on temporal things. I'm not talking about material stuff. I'm not talking about things that are dependent upon your location, your social status, your wealth, anything like that. The principles that I'm talking about are universal. They're not, restricted by your location. They're not limited to your social status, how much money you have, if you're a Republican, Democrat, etc. I'm talking about stuff that can be put into practice anywhere you are at any time. When I was going through this and identifying principles that were important to me, and I'm talking about stuff like charity, love for your fellow man, love for yourself, respect, self-respect, integrity, stuff like that. When I was going through this, I was thinking about actions that were important to me. Because, until you put something into practice, if it's not an action and it doesn't get expression, does it really have meaning? You could say that you love someone, but we often hear that love is an action, right? Well, the same thing could be said for a lot of these principles that I'm talking about. So I made a list of the behaviors and the actions that were important to me. And then I started cutting out the ones that weren't the highest priority. And I kept the core things that were super important to me. Literally made an inventory. And then when I had 3 or 4 that were really key to me, that were important to me, because it's not going to be the same for everybody. If you sit down and make a list of things that are important to you, it's going to be different from the list that I make. And I want, when I'm talking about these activities, I'm talking about stuff that you can put into practice anywhere. Once again, this is based on a universal principle, so you should be able to practice it anywhere. Once I had identified the core things that were important to me, I made what was basically a mission statement. Now, mission statements, if you don't know, are statements that tell a goal of a company or an organization. They describe the vision of the company and where they want to go. Some people differentiate between a vision statement and a mission statement, but a lot of times the mission statement is a reflection of the vision statement because it gives you the direction that you're going to take your company. It gives you an idea of what your company's about, why it exists, and where it's going in the future. With this in mind, we make these mission statements for organizations and companies to give them direction. It's something that they can always refer back to. Think about north on a compass. You're always going to be able to get your bearing from that compass, right? So a mission statement gives you the opportunity to check your bearing. You can take your activities and then compare that with your mission statement, with your compass, and say, okay, is this consistent with what I'm doing? Are my actions and behaviors consistent with what my stated goal is? And if it isn't, then you can start to revise your actions or reform your actions or change so that you are living consistently with your mission statement. I made a mission statement for myself, and there were a few things on there that were difficult. I used to have problems. I used to beat myself up internally. I used to call myself no good and tell myself, oh, you can't do this or you can't do that. I made a list of positive affirmations, things that I truly believed about myself, things that were really important. So when I felt down and when I felt low, I could pick myself up. And the reason why the toolbox is so important is a lot of times you'll defeat yourself. You know, if you stop yourself before you even start, it's over. Sometimes you can be your biggest enemy, especially in a place like prison. It's easy to get in your own head and your own thoughts and start going negative when you're locked in a cell for most of the day. And you're surrounded by negativity and gangs and violence. Of course, it's easy to get in your head. I had identified the things that were important to me. I committed it all to writing, and I put it on a single piece of paper, and I carried that paper around in my back pocket. So if at any time I needed to see if my actions and my behaviors were consistent with what my life was about, I could pull out my sheet of paper, I could look at my stated goals, and I could either affirm what I was doing was right, or I could say, hey, this ain't what I'm about. I need to change some stuff. I'm going to share with you the actions that I have found meaningful for me in any environment. I kept this piece of paper with me when I was in Gen Pop, when I was in the hole, when I was in the mental health unit. I carried this piece of paper with me every single day. And what was important to me, I decided that I wanted to make wellness a priority over obsession. And I can do that anywhere. And why is that important for me? Because I have a tendency to get obsessive over certain things to the point where it starts taking away from my health. A lot of people will do this with addictive behaviors or something like that. With me, it could be something like music. It could be something like reading or whatever, a certain subject. I don't know. Some people have told me that I need to take a test to see if I have Asperger's or something because I have that hyper focus. I'll get so focused in on one thing that I become obsessive over it and I don't have time for anything else. So I wanted to make wellness a priority over obsession. At one point, I was working out pretty steadily and to the point where I was starting to have really bad aches and pains, and, you know, that's not what I'm about. So wellness as a priority over obsession. Furthermore, when you have an obsession, it doesn't necessarily emphasize wellness. Wellness is more important. I love playing music. I could play music all the time. But what if it's not helping me grow? Okay. I like to read books. But what if I get involved with that to the extent that I neglect my personal wellness? It's no good, right? Same thing with documentaries or movies or whatever. If you become obsessed with it to the point that you start neglecting your own personal wellness, it's all bad. Another thing that I found to be very important was to do something for myself each day. Now, the way I worded it was to do something kind for myself. But by kindness, I don't just mean, okay, I'm going to treat myself to something cool off Canteen today. I mean, I'm going to do something that makes me feel good. And that could be anything. A lot of times for me, that's personal growth. I want to grow as an individual. So I would do something to help me grow. But that's going to tie into something else that I'm going to get into here in a minute. But doing something good for myself or doing something kind for myself was very important. I also wanted to do something kind for others. I wanted to do something good for others. So if someone wanted a cup of coffee or something and they didn't have any coffee, I would give them a cup of coffee. If those guys were back in the infirmary and they were on the terminal list and they were all alone, they didn't have their family coming in to see them, I wanted to be there and sit with them. But you could do something like that wherever you're at. You know, you can do something nice for someone. Sometimes doing something nice for someone is as simple as listening to them when they're in a bad spot. When I was in the hole, you know, I can't run down and give someone a shot of coffee, but I can listen through the bars and I can listen to their story. I can listen to their pain. I can hear them out. Or even if they're not in any sort of pain, I can just sit there and spend time with them. Time is a valuable thing, huh? I mean, it's all limited. How much time we got on this planet? The clock's ticking down. So are we going to hoard all that time for ourselves, or are we going to do something good with it and give it away? Give someone a piece of your time today. It might mean the world to them. Now, the last thing I wrote down on my sheet of paper is that I wanted to do something each day to grow in the 4 aspects of myself. I believe, from my standpoint, and this isn't saying this is how it is and you have to believe like me, but I believe there's different aspects of a person's makeup, so to speak. You have your physical self, you have your intellectual self, you have your emotional self, and you have your spiritual self or your philosophical self or your deeper internal thoughts, whatever that is to you. But I wanted to do something to advance myself in each of those 4 areas every day. So if I want to sharpen my intellect, I'm going to pick up a book about something that I find interesting. For me, that was the branch of logic in philosophy. You know, that was my thing. I also studied religion. That was really fascinating to me, and I wanted to increase my knowledge in that area. I would go work out because I wanted to, you know, improve myself and grow from a physical fitness standpoint. I would do something to grow emotionally. I would grapple with my emotions. What negative emotions am I feeling right now, and what can I do about it? How can I move past this hang up that I have? How can I outgrow my past? You know, I had a rough childhood growing up. So some people hold on to that stuff and they blame their parents and their upbringing for all their problems. And they carry a lot of angst and hatred and resentment. And I didn't want to be that bitter person. So how do I move past it? And I would work on that. So I would do something in each of the 4 aspects of self. Now, this is just an example of what I did. What's important to you is going to be different from what's important to me. But the way you can have meaning is you can identify things that are meaningful to you that you can do anywhere, anytime, regardless of your social standing, your wealth, your political affiliation. None of that stuff matters. Find stuff that you can put into action anywhere. That's how you find meaning. And even if it's, I think the best way to do it, if nothing else, do something every day to make someone else's life better. You can't fail at that. I always said that if I could help one person during my incarceration, just one person, if I could help them through a difficult time, or if they could learn from my experiences and my mistakes and my successes, if they could learn one thing, one person learn one thing that could help them and make their life better, my incarceration wasn't for nothing. It had a purpose. It had a meaning. So with that, I'm going to end this video. Thank you guys for watching. I love y'all. I'm Eric. This has been another episode of From Prison to the Streets. I will see y'all later.
Right nation.